Your one click on the subscribe button makes a huge difference. Thank you for your kind support.
The opening scene of Sinners introduces us to an ancient legend about people born with the gift of making music so powerful it can pierce the veil between life and death. This extraordinary talent allows these special individuals to conjure spirits from both past and future. The narration tells us these gifted musicians were known by different names across cultures: Fili, in ancient Ireland, Firekeepers, in Choctaw land, and Riaps, in West Africa. While this gift brings healing to communities, it also, ominously, attracts evil. The film then transitions to a church scene where we meet Sammy, a young man who appears to be in conflict with his father, a preacher. The congregation is singing, "This Little Light of Mine," and there's palpable tension as Sammy's father commands him to drop the guitar. The father declares that Shabbat has found the call of sin, and demands that Sammy swear before the congregation to leave those sinning ways where they lie. This establishes one of the film's central conflicts, the struggle between religious devotion and artistic expression, particularly through blues music, which was often viewed as the devil's music in certain religious communities. Set in Mississippi in the early 1930s during the Great Depression, the film creates a rich tapestry of the era's social dynamics. Sammy is characterized as a talented musician torn between his father's strict religious expectations and his passion for playing blues music. His father sees his musical inclinations as sinful and demands he abandon them, creating a painful internal conflict for Sammy, who feels his music is an essential part of his identity. The narrative then introduces us to the central characters, identical twins Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan in a dual role. They're World War I veterans who have returned to their hometown after spending time in Chicago. The twins arrive with significant money, which we learn they obtained through criminal activities in Chicago, possibly working with Al Capone's organization. They purchase an old mill from a white man named Hogwood, planning to convert it into a juke joint, a bar featuring blues music and dancing. The interaction with Hogwood reveals the racial tensions of the era, as he repeatedly refers to them disrespectfully, but the brothers maintain their composure because they have a larger plan. The twins reunite with their cousin Sammy, who's revealed to be an extraordinarily talented blues musician. There's evident admiration between the cousins, and the twins encourage Sammy to play at their new establishment. This represents an opportunity for Sammy to express himself musically despite his father's prohibition. Stack reunites with his former girlfriend Mary, whose mother recently died. There's unresolved tension between them as Stack had previously abandoned her, promising to return but failing to do so. Mary confronts him about this betrayal, and Stack's response is defensive and dismissive. He explains that he arranged for her to marry a white man to give her financial security, but Mary makes it clear she never wanted that life, she wanted to be with Stack. Their interaction reveals Stack's complicated character. He cares for Mary but struggles to express emotions or commit to relationships. Simultaneously, Smoke reconnects with his estranged wife Annie, who practices traditional spirituality and root work. Their reunion is tender but complicated by past trauma. They lost their infant daughter, and Smoke questions why Annie's prayers couldn't save their child. Annie explains that prayers don't always work the way we expect, and sometimes fate has other plans. Their conversation reveals the depth of their connection despite their separation. In a parallel storyline, we're introduced to a mysterious man named Remick who appears at a rural home seeking shelter, claiming he's being pursued. The homeowners, Bert and Joan, reluctantly take him in, but it soon becomes evident that Remick is something supernatural, a vampire. He turns Bert, and together they later turn Joan as well. This introduces the supernatural horror element of the film, contrasting with the earlier focus on interpersonal and societal conflicts. The twins' juke joint, Club Juke, opens with great success. The establishment becomes a vibrant gathering place for the local black community, offering music, dancing, and a temporary escape from the hardships of Depression-era Mississippi. Delta Slim, an older blues musician, performs alongside Sammy, creating powerful music that moves the audience. The performances highlight the cultural significance of blues music as both entertainment and a form of communal storytelling and emotional release. As the evening progresses, Remick and his newly turned vampires arrive at the juke joint, drawn by the music and the gathering of potential victims. Initially denied entry by Cornbread, the doorman, they eventually convince Mary to speak with them. Believing they're potential customers who could help the bar's finances, Mary goes outside. Tragically, this leads to her being attacked and turned by Remick. She returns to the bar, seduces Stack, and during their intimate encounter, she kills him, turning him into a vampire as well. Smoke discovers Stack's body and is devastated. Annie, recognizing the supernatural nature of Stack's wounds, convinces Smoke to lock his brother's body in a room while they figure out what to do. Annie, with her knowledge of spiritual traditions, identifies that they're dealing with vampires and explains the rules. Vampires cannot enter a building without being invited, they can be repelled by holy water and garlic, and they must be killed with a stake through the heart to truly die. The situation escalates when Stack revives and begins trying to convince Smoke to let him in. The emotional weight of seeing his twin brother, now a monster, begging to be admitted creates a powerful conflict for Smoke. This mirrors the film's larger themes about finding balance between love for family and self-preservation. Outside, Remick begins turning more of the bar's patrons who had stepped outside, creating an army of vampires. When Cornbread returns from the woods, his repeated requests to be invited inside alert the survivors that he has been turned. The remaining humans inside the bar, including Smoke, Annie, Sammy, Grace and Bo Chow, local store owners who helped with the opening, and a few others, realize they're surrounded by vampires who want to be invited in. Remick, speaking through the walls, reveals his twisted vision. He believes he's creating a community free from racial persecution by turning people into vampires. He argues that as immortal beings, they won't suffer under white supremacy anymore. This adds a complex layer to the antagonist. Remick isn't simply evil for evil's sake. He has a warped idealistic mission born from the very real trauma of racial violence. He also warns them that Hogwood is a clan member who plans to attack the juke joint in the morning to reclaim the land and kill its black occupants. The situation becomes dire when Remick threatens to turn Grace's daughter, who isn't present at the bar but lives nearby. In desperation, Grace invites the vampires in, believing she's protecting her child. This triggers a chaotic fight between the humans and the vampires. During the battle, Grace is killed, and Annie is bitten by the vampirized Stack. Before she turns, Annie reminds Smoke of his promise to kill her if she was bitten, forcing him to stake his wife through the heart in a heartbreaking scene. Delta Slim sacrifices himself to help the others escape, but Sammy is cornered by Remick, who reveals he specifically wanted Sammy for his musical gift. According to Remick, musicians like Sammy can bridge the gap between worlds, and he needs Sammy's talent to expand his vampire community's power. This connects back to the film's opening narration about musicians who can pierce the veil between life and death. An emotional confrontation between Smoke and Stack occurs, with Stack trying to convince his brother to join him in vampirism. Smoke, protected by a talisman Annie gave him, refuses and eventually overpowers Stack, preparing to kill him. Meanwhile, Sammy manages to wound Remick with his broken guitar, and Smoke finishes him off with a stake through the heart. As dawn approaches, the surviving vampires are destroyed by the sunrise, bringing an end to the immediate threat. Exhausted and traumatized, Smoke sends Sammy home to safety, which explains the film's opening scene where Sammy returns to his father's church with a scar and broken guitar. Hogwood arrives with clan members as predicted, intending to kill the brothers and reclaim the property. In a final act of heroism, Smoke fights and kills the clansmen but is mortally wounded in the process. As he dies, he has a vision of Annie and their daughter welcoming him, suggesting a spiritual reunion with his lost family. The film includes a mid-credits scene set 60 years later, in 1992. An aged Sammy has become a successful blues musician, having chosen his passion over his father's demands. One night after a performance, he's visited by Stack and Mary, still vampires and Unaged. Stack reveals that Smoke couldn't bring himself to kill his twin brother in their final confrontation, but made Stack promise to leave Sammy alone. The vampires offer Sammy immortality, which he refuses. Before they leave, Sammy confesses that despite the horror of that night at Club Juke, it was also the best day of his life because he was able to play his music freely. Stack agrees, noting it was the last time he saw his brother and the sun, and the only time he truly felt free. Sinners masterfully blends supernatural horror with historical drama to explore themes of freedom, family bonds, religious conflict, racial injustice, and artistic expression. The vampire narrative serves as a metaphor for different forms of bondage and liberation. Remick offers a twisted version of freedom through vampirism, immortality without racial persecution, but at the cost of one's humanity and soul. In contrast, music represents a purer form of transcendence and freedom, allowing the characters to express themselves and connect with others without sacrificing their humanity. The film's setting in Depression-era Mississippi provides a rich backdrop for examining racial tensions and the role of music in African American communities. The juke joint represents more than just entertainment. It's a space of autonomy and cultural expression in a society that denied Black Americans basic rights and dignity. Through the blues performances, the film highlights how music served as both a means of preserving cultural identity and a way of processing collective trauma. The relationship between the twins, Smoke and Stack, forms the emotional core of the film. Their bond is tested by supernatural forces, but ultimately proves unbreakable. Even when Stack becomes a monster, Smoke cannot bring himself to destroy his brother completely. This fraternal connection parallels the film's exploration of other relationships: Sammy and his father, Smoke and Annie, Stack and Mary, each complicated by different forms of love, obligation, and betrayal. Sammy's character arc represents the clash between religious authority and artistic freedom. His father sees the blues as sinful, while Sammy experiences his music as a form of spiritual expression in its own right. The film doesn't offer easy answers to this conflict but suggests that authentic self-expression can be a form of spiritual practice. Sammy's ultimate choice to pursue his music, shown in the mid-credits scene, is presented not as a rejection of spirituality but as an embrace of a different kind of communion with the divine through his gift. The supernatural elements of Sinners draw from various cultural traditions around vampires while adding unique twists that connect to the film's themes. The vampire's need to be invited in serves as a metaphor for consent and agency. The characters must choose to let evil into their lives. Similarly, the inability of vampires to see their reflections symbolizes the loss of identity that comes with surrendering to destructive forces, whether supernatural or societal. Annie's character brings elements of traditional African and African American spiritual practices into the narrative, offering a counterpoint to both Christian dogma and vampire mythology. Her knowledge of protective rituals and her understanding of the boundary between life and death make her a crucial ally in fighting the vampires. Through Annie, the film acknowledges the wisdom of traditional belief systems that were often dismissed or demonized by mainstream religious institutions. The film's climax, with Smoke sacrificing himself to protect others from the Klan, connects the supernatural horror with the very real historical horror of racist violence. By defeating both the vampires and the Klansmen, Smoke fights against different manifestations of evil that threaten his community. His final vision of reunion with Annie and their child offers spiritual consolation after a life marked by loss and struggle. The mid-credits scene provides a bittersweet epilogue that reinforces the film's themes. Sammy achieved success by following his passion, while Stack and Mary found a different kind of freedom through vampirism, albeit at a terrible cost. The scene offers no easy moral judgment on their choices but acknowledges the complexity of finding freedom in a world full of constraints. Stack's comment about that night being the only time he truly felt free, despite the horror that followed, encapsulates the film's exploration of the elusive nature of freedom in a society built on oppression. Director Ryan Coogler crafts a narrative that works on multiple levels, as a supernatural thriller, a historical drama, a meditation on music and spirituality, and an exploration of family bonds. The dual performances by Michael B. Jordan as the contrasting twins provide the emotional anchor for the story, with both characters representing different responses to trauma and oppression. Smoke chooses to fight for a better life within the constraints of humanity, while Stack ultimately embraces a dark alternative that promises freedom at the cost of his soul. The film also examines how communities respond to threats, both supernatural and human. The patrons of Club Juke initially find solidarity and joy in their shared space, only to have it invaded by forces that seek to destroy them. Some, like Grace, make desperate choices to protect loved ones, while others, like Annie, stand firm in their principles even at the cost of their lives. These varied responses reflect the complex ways marginalized communities have historically navigated threats to their existence and cultural expression. Music serves as both narrative device and thematic element throughout. Sinners. The blues performances aren't mere interludes, but integral moments that advance the story and develop character. Sammy's playing attracts both appreciative audiences and supernatural evil, illustrating the film's opening statement about musical gifts bringing both healing and danger. The scenes of musical performance capture the communal aspect of blues music, how it created spaces where people could momentarily transcend their circumstances through shared experience. The vampire mythos in Sinners connects to broader cultural narratives about immortality and its costs. Remic's offer of eternal life appeals to those who suffer under the crushing weight of racism and poverty, but the film suggests that this apparent escape is actually another form of bondage. True freedom, the film implies, comes not from escaping death but from living authentically and in community with others, even when that life is difficult and finite. The juxtaposition of supernatural and historical horrors in Sinners offers a powerful commentary on American history. By placing vampires and Klansmen in the same narrative, the film suggests connections between mythological monsters and the very real monsters created by racial hatred. Both feed on fear and division, and both require community resistance to be defeated. The film's visual style reinforces its thematic concerns, with the warm, vibrant scenes in the juke joint contrasting with the cold, shadowy encounters with the vampires. This visual language underscores the film's exploration of light and darkness, both literal and metaphorical, and the human tendency to seek illumination through art, connection, and spirituality in the face of encroaching shadows. Sinners ultimately offers a complex meditation on the search for freedom in a world filled with constraints. Each character seeks liberation in their own way, through music, spirituality, wealth, power, or immortality, but the film suggests that true freedom is found not in escaping human conditions but in authentic connection with others. Even as the narrative acknowledges the brutal realities of racism and violence in American history, it affirms the power of cultural expression and community resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The film's ending, with Smoke joining his family in the afterlife while Stack continues his existence as a vampire, offers two different forms of transcendence. Smoke finds peace through sacrifice and spiritual reunion, while Stack achieves a darker form of immortality that separates him from his humanity. These parallel endings refuse simple moral judgment, instead inviting viewers to contemplate different responses to suffering and mortality. Through its rich blend of horror, history, music, and drama, Sinners creates a uniquely American Gothic tale that speaks to both historical traumas and contemporary concerns. By examining how communities face threats to their existence and identity, the film resonates beyond its supernatural premise to address enduring questions about resistance, survival, and the pursuit of freedom in the face of oppression. The final image of aged Sammy with his guitar, having lived a full life dedicated to his art despite the obstacles placed in his path, offers a hopeful counterpoint to the film's darker elements. His refusal of immortality in favor of a mortal life well lived suggests that true victory comes not from escaping death but from filling life with meaning, connection, and authentic expression. In this way, Sinners affirms the power of art to transcend circumstances without denying the reality of suffering, offering a nuanced exploration of how humans navigate between light and darkness, bondage and freedom, life and death.